Carnival is in full swing. We have another major concern here happening in Tobago, and of course that's what's going on with the oil spill from this mysterious vessel that ended up in our waters. Of course, we know the vessel's name is Gulfstream. We don't know the actual identity of the vessel, where it came from, any of that information yet. I know the teams are still out there working on trying to figure out that information. It's not easy at this point in time to get it physically from the vessel, but they are still trying. However, I know there are other things happening in the background in terms of identifying it, but the major concern right now is how do we contain this oil spill? And we've been hearing, I had some conversations also with some of the people that are out there trying to put the oil booms around the vessel and stating that, you know, what we have right now is not quite working. So hopefully within the next day or two, I know some equipment and so on came up from Trinidad over last night, and some more is coming up this morning. Hopefully we can get the larger oil booms here in Tobago and we can put them around so we can contain the oil around the vessel, because it's continuously leaking out. The teams also try to see how they can stop the leak, but the problem is trying to figure out where the leak on the vessel is coming up from. And because of how the vessel is situated on the reef, the rocking back and forth, it's creating a delta P effect. There is also low visibility because of all the silt and the sand and the oil mixed into the water. It is causing some problems and also making it dangerous for the divers to get too close to figure out exactly where the leak is coming from, much less to try to stop it. But while all of that is going on, that oil is in our waters, it's getting into our shorelines, and of course the shoreline specifically between Scarborough and Cove. Of course, we have to point it out because we know there's a lot of misinformation going out there that's saying that the oil is going out to the other beaches. No, it is not. It is just contained around the beaches in Scarborough, all the way down to Cove, Canoe Bay area. Those are the beaches, those are the areas that are affected. But it is some important environmental features that are affected. We have the mangroves in that area that is being affected, the Tru mangroves. The reef itself, unfortunately, has undergone significant damage and continues to undergo significant damage as long as that vessel stays there and continues to rock and grind its way on that reef. And to give us a perspective from an environmental side about the impact, we are being joined by the head of the Environment Tobago, Mr. Bertrand Bhikarry. Good morning and welcome to you, Mr. Bhikarry. How are you doing this morning?
Hi, good morning, Kandace. I'm fine. Thanks for having me. You were asking?
Yes. So I know that Environment Tobago, your teams would have also been out there with the Institute of Marine Affairs that's out there monitoring the situation, as well as EMA and all those other stakeholders on the environmental front. What have you observed so far in terms of how much the oil has affected those sensitive areas?
Well, in truth, we don't know, but there's enough potential for big damage. I'm impressed with the response from the government agencies. Environment Tobago actually hasn't gone. We just collected information, talking to people who can actually help. The people who are actually doing the work, the people on the boats, the people from the Pilots Association, the people who actually getting dirty. I have to say thanks to them. For doing it, and I find that the government agencies are doing good work collecting information to prepare the response. So I may only want to talk about the response that we should have if as we move forward from tomorrow, I guess.
And let's get into that conversation. What is our response that we should be having?
Well, we have to look at against our past responses. We value that area. You've seen how much money we spent when NGC was running the pipeline. They put a horizontal pipe under the reef to protect it while they were doing, I think it was Cove. So we do have a high value as a country. We have a high value for that area. This incident is grave in the sense that trying to retrieve the boat, if you want to bring it on shore, is going to have much more impact than, I believe, that pipeline that we spent the money to go on the reef. That presents a huge problem. We don't really have the resources for that in this country. To move a boat, to cut it up, you don't know what's in it. I think, so that's the scope of ignorance that we operate in. But going forward, we do need to use the example, I think, of checking to see how much systems we have, because there'll be other disasters. So that's how I'm thinking. This disaster, watch what we're doing, test the systems we have in place. As I think the Prime Minister said, small mercies. We can learn from this one. It's manageable. We don't know the extent of how much damage it is while we're saying manageable.
Certainly, and like as the Prime Minister said yesterday, Sunday, he said that, I mean, even though we have some kind of control, we don't have the situation fully under control itself. And he mentioned that there is a potential for other disasters depending on how the situation unfolds. What are those disasters that we can see happening?
Yeah, I'll come to that, but I don't think we're actually in control right now. We observing rather closely, even though we're going around it and doing whatever we can with whatever we have. But what do we do going forward? Everybody who's in their special places, like if we start locally, the EMA has an office here, they may be deciding what to put in their terms of reference for how the rescue or the retrieval of the vessel is going to be. What should be looked at, the equivalent of a CEC certificate, but I don't know if that applies in this case. But the guidelines would still be relevant. You still want to minimize damage in the rescue. So I think EMA will be doing that. I will be studying their little hearts out. We will be trying to simplify the messages, make it a teachable moment, as one of my people said. So everybody should be doing something on, I guess, when the mass is finished, you'll start.
I want to get into also the impact that this can have. Let's start with the mangroves first of all, because we saw over the last few days how much oil is seeping into the mangroves, and we're seeing here on our screen just some views of just how much it has stuck onto quite a lot of the mangroves. So what impact can this have on the mangroves itself, as well as all the marine creatures, all the creatures that are home there?
Well, impact, that photograph you're showing me is showing me a dead mangrove. So if we want to gauge impact on a corpse, we'll say, well, everything's dead already, so this oil has having no impact on that mangrove, it's dead. There's no crabs, there's no other thing. However, in the broader picture, away from that area, there is still vibrant mangrove that is being compromised. So you should have actually taken some of that stuff. That's a big problem. Everybody knows what has to be done to save mangroves that's not increased in oil. Mangrove with oil is a bigger problem. I don't know, what do we do? We can't go in there and scrape up oil inside mangrove. You have to wait for it to actually do something. So maybe we should be reseeding somewhere else to replant after a few months or something. It's what you would do with any garden that got poisoned. You wait for the period and then you come back in with your resources, your forces, and your intentions. Again, we'll help with that sort of thing. We would look for outside help. And that's when the general public will start to come in the restoration process. For now, it's the experts doing the thing, I think.
And then what about the reef itself? Because we had reports from the divers where there's been quite a lot of damage on the reef, and it's continuously being damaged.
Well, I'd prefer you use the word seabed.
Okay.
Because the seabed in the entire area harbors life. That contributes to our quality of life. That seabed is being compromised, has been compromised under threat a long time, because if you think of it as a risk. That part of Tobago is under risk from an oil field. Our oil field is somewhere off Galeota, there's lots of oils. We have Guyana pumping oil now, and we have Suriname down there. So we're actually in an impact zone, if you will, for oil. I said, thank God for small mercies that we could use this one to learn how to deal with the bigger ones. So the seabed is facing all those risks, and people who are interested will get involved in trying to mitigate those risks.
And then what about the impact on the fish itself? Because for our fishermen, they said that, of course, that's an area where they catch a lot of their bait as a spawning ground for lobsters and a lot of the fish that we consume. I mean, what impact would that have on the availability of fish or the numbers of fish?
If the seabed is compromised, if they can, they'll move away, and if not, they'll die. There's no long or short way to say that.
And then what about recovery? How long can it be before maybe those things can be restored?
In a historical basis, it took several 100 million years to build stuff like that. Of course, now with our superior intelligence or deep motives, we will actually put some money behind it and try and get it done in the next 100 years, I guess.
So it might take a long time.
But let's look at the Gulf where this big spill was off the east coast of the States. Those areas are still, they haven't really caught back yet. The wildlife, the sub-sea life. You look at Point-a-Pierre, where spills of this sort of magnitude have been happening daily for years. Those areas are still sort of, the water's brown, turbid. There's not much life there. Yes, there's bottom dwellers like the shrimp, but even that shrimp catch is dying. I was there the other day. The sand is black. It's stinky black. I'm talking about Point Lisa, Salvadetta thing. So we are heading up to being developed ourselves in Tobago.
And then, we're looking at, let's say, Petit Tru, for instance. I mean, that was a beach that has white sand. I know it's covered with oil. I mean, I know there's a lot of work going on right now to try to remove the oil, but we know it's a process. It's going to be a lengthy process. Would we see that beach returning back to that white sanded beach that we know?
I think so. Is what happens. This is a temporary thing until it happens again. So yeah, the beach will come back to some state of non-oil, whatever that is. There will be other threats, onshore, illegal building, excavation, siltation. Those things are still happening. So while we rush really boldly out to remove the oil, we should really do a few other things also, to really help it back. It's as simple as that. You can't just address the latest problem. You have to now go and address everything. This thing has scaled up.
And, so as you mentioned, just all the silts and the pollution that's coming into the water and so on. Could you just give us a perspective? Because I don't think that a lot of our viewers even understand how the things that we do on land really affects the quality of the water we have around our island.
I believe our viewers know. Maybe they can make a decision at that point in time to actually compromise what they know. Carnival is a good example. For 363 days a year, you take good care of your garbage. And today you might just dump it on the ground. Some of that's going to go right on the bottom of this building into Scarborough and every other bay. Carnival costumes, I've noticed, go on a tree in Roxborough. So garbage goes. If garbage can go, other things can go. But our way of life leads to onshore pollution that actually addresses the coastal area. This is an ongoing problem. Development brings that unplanned development, uncontrolled development, unregulated development. Kills coastal areas. So I said, this latest oil spill, it's actually not a nail in the coffin, because we don't have enough information to know what it is, how much is there, what is actually it is. We do think, you wanted speculation, you had asked, if somebody is, I think his Prime Minister used the word illicit, if somebody's doing something wrong with transporting hydrocarbon, I think is the word they're using now. Other people are doing it because we have buyers and we have sellers. We have, the countries that need oil that to bypass the sanctions, they're going to move it. Between Trinidad and Tobago is the only place they could pass.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned that, what about even the search for the vessel? I know that you also, before we came on, you mentioned something about there's a technical way to try to figure out where this vessel came from, or the identity of the vessel, all of that information that will actually help us in deciding what the next steps are in terms of how we treat it.
This is speculation. You're speculating. The vessel on our reef was being towed. Mm-hmm. So if this vessel is not in good mechanical shape, not registered, not anywhere, the one that was towing it is because that vessel has to maintain a good profile to be in these areas and other areas, and we need to go with the cargo. So if you want to track that vessel, there are patterns. You've seen our tracks, I think, from the ferry up and down between Trinidad on the marine traffic. Registered users can actually, somebody with time, inclination, and a job from the ministry could actually track those behaviors, look for erratic behaviors, or for the last 2 weeks, you want to look for a vessel that's looking for a vessel, a zigzag pattern or something. There are ways you would look for things aside from the norm. Mm-hmm. But as I said, these things may already be in train within our national security people and all that. I would expect so. I hope so.
Mm-hmm. And from your monitoring of or observance of just the authorities, IMA, EMA, and all those people, getting into these areas and trying to figure out exactly, do the assessments on the mangroves, on the coastal lines, and so on. What are your what is being said at this point in time?
Our job in the NGO thing is to watch, shadow what's happening at the governance level. I like what I'm seeing. It's textbook, as we have learned from other places. The public is thinking that maybe we were doing this thing. I disagree. In an emergency, you have to hang a bit more on the side of caution. You have to be overcautious. So it's good that we overreacting, in inverted commas. And then again, there's the more pragmatic aspect. You have to overreact to scale up the emergency to get outside help. So that's the world we live in. It's not actually old-fashioned nice, but that's how you get to scale up to get more help.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we're not quite done yet with Mr. Bhikarry. We have a lot more coming up for you. So let's go for a quick break, and we'll be right back.
It's a brand new morning.
And welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, we are continuing to have this situation in focus. What's going on with the oil spill, the impact, the vessel that's stuck on our reef, and just the efforts in trying to get the situation under control. It is not under control yet, and there's a whole lot that we need to do. And there has been this talk around in our space about whether or not we need international help. And yes, in some respects, we do need some international help. And we are continuing our conversation this morning with the head of Environment Tobago, Mr. Bertrand Bhikarry. And Mr. Bhikarry, can you give us an idea of what kind of international help is there available for us?
Let's justify the question. Oil is an international product. We taking out the oil and we're selling it to international markets. Maybe somebody is taking our oil and also selling it to the international market. This is an international problem. It's not just something in your kitchen. Mm-hmm. We're justified in asking for help. The resources that manage oil, handle oil, and understand the policies to do with controlling oil spills, oil use, whatever. So that's the justification for asking for help. Mm-hmm. A little place like Tobago shouldn't have all that equipment. We don't even have an oil field. Although some people have said that the oil offside Tobago is Tobago's. If Tobago wants to own that oil field, they don't have the equipment. Mm-hmm. But I believe this is a global problem any oil spill, the users, the producers, the sellers, and the buyers have to put back some effort when something goes wrong with the supply chain. And that's how I see this.
And, is there even funding available or ways that we could even recover some of the losses that we unfortunately incurred? Because, of course, this wasn't a problem that us in Tobago created. This is just literally something that wandered into our shores.
I use one word, cost. Everything costs. So the effort that we see out there didn't only come from Tobago's coffers. One of our sponsors, Woodside, has sent a vessel, but they would have had to rewrite contracts. The contractor's not working for free. They had another job. So the legal costs to even rewrite the contract to deploy that ship to come here, that's a lot of money and boating and move yet. That would have had to happen fast, 3 times as fast. To get that here, multiply that by how much other agents you see there. And that's just one aspect of types of costs. So I don't know who's working that out, if anybody is. Those things are cost, and they have to be defrayed. Yes, there's different ways to get that money. People use the word CSR, so what Woodside is doing is a form of responsible contributions, but it is also CSR, and they do have a budget for that. So, and they would justify wherever they can get the money from to help to make everybody be able to produce oil another day.
And while all of that is going...
It wasn't incidental that our Minister of Energy was here.
Certainly not.
Yeah, we have to whitewash the oil.
Yes. So while all of that's going on, we still have that oil leaking out. It's on the shores, it's in the water, in shallow waters. What exactly is the impact of that in terms of, the wildlife and stuff like that? For those who may not understand or may not realize how big of a problem this is for us.
Well, if you spill oil on a flat, nice surface in the open sea, you can put a boom around it and contain it. If you put it in a washing machine in tumble cycle, the oil's gonna break up. So this thing is on a reef, it's breaking up and dispersing. Some's going below, some going to the lagoon, some going to the beaches. While the spill itself may be small, the impact is being fragmented into different zones, subsea, sideways, longshore, that sort of thing. So it's complex. You can't put a vessel. It's too shallow for a real seagoing vessel. It's too deep for a backhoe. And there's private lands behind. The shoreline is fragile. That's why I said NGC had to spend so much money to protect it when they were doing the pipeline to bring the oil into Cove. Environment Tobago actually made a lot of fuss in those years to get that pipeline to go under the reef. Every time you talk of the problem, another aspect would come. So somebody, I suppose the THA has people on this. Government. It's a national emergency, so I think the entire government has people on this. Our job is to look at it from our collection, our catchment of knowledge comes from our volunteers and our members and the networks of other people we deal with, wherever we deal with them. So we'll pass information on. That's our function. It's bigger than it looks. The response is actually going to be damaging too. Maybe bigger than the damage.
Could you explain that a little bit? How is it big? Give me an idea of just the scope, the magnitude
You
of the
ever shut down
problem.
with your car and 6 friends come to help and they all have different mechanical backgrounds. And one have a tow truck and a chain, and one guy hooks the chain up, he pulls the bumper off. And the next one fixing something that doesn't sort of thing. You have to be careful for something like that. Everybody's going to come with their level of expertise and work within that parameter of expertise. And we're working on a delicate area. So I fear for that. So it has to be coordinated. I do trust that the EMA will coordinate.
Yeah. Yes, of course. At this point, then in time, we do have to trust those authorities.
That's why we invested money in them, yes.
Yeah, that's why we invested money in them, certainly, and hopefully we can get the right solution. And you're saying also that it is difficult in us even trying to determine, or even them trying to determine which is the best solution.
There's only scenarios, so you have to plan for each one, and then you have to bring resources for each one. You can't go and go below the boat with a human. They'll get squashed. You can't go and cut the top. You don't even know what the nature is. I don't think the tests come back yet. In the meantime, this thing is gasifying inside there, slushing and making fumes. All of those contingent scenarios have to be catered to. Somebody's having a nightmare somewhere, I'm sure. That's a short thing. So, while we're doing the mass, there's Ash Wednesday, I guess. That's when we'll have the other conversation.
Yes. And the other conversation is the price of fish as well, and the impact on the fish that we have around Tobago, because we already see where the Lambo fishermen, it's difficult even for them to go out because they can't pass their vessels where the oil is and so on.
Going back to cost. If 40 days from now we need fish, I think it's Good Friday. Tobago fish is already expensive. It wouldn't go down. Tourism will suffer. Accommodation sector will suffer because nobody wants to go to an oily place with expensive food and a potential disaster. Your vessels, I think the entire island vessels are prioritizing people who come in to help. That'll be trucks, men and machinery, taking up, displacing ordinary travelers. So that makes travel iffy. And the whole element of cost goes beyond raw dollar. Loss of time is a cost. So the more you talk about it, you realize that watching the ship alone on the wreck is not just the element.
It's a much bigger problem than what we are physically seeing with our eyes.
After that, we're gonna get this sense, the loss of sense of well-being. Because when the fish go up and the rooms are not being rented and the place on the boat's not there, and resources are being dedicated to beds and hospitals because we don't know. I mean, himself, you get a little flu or break after carnival, you're compromising your bed space. So we on the top of our iceberg of worries here.
And then even there was a concern from the residents of Lambo because they are living with the stench of the oil or the diesel or whatever it is that's coming from this vessel.
It's money. You're smelling money. Oil is money. So I wouldn't call it stench.
But I mean, what about that impact on their health?
Money doesn't make you unhealthy.
All right. So, I mean...
Don't forget, we want oil in Tobago, huh? I mean, we want to be thing. But this is step away from the money a bit. Let's talk autonomy. This is a good chance to build an aspect of autonomous resources. You know, we'll have people being trained, people becoming more skillful in doing certain things. I think Tima was looking for 1,000 volunteers for years now. I think Alan Stewart was looking for 1,000 volunteers for
the CERT 1000.
For the CERT 1000. I read BBC. I think we have 1,000 volunteers on the beach now. That's tongue in cheek, but good to you, Alan. You got your 1,000 volunteers.
Certainly. And as we're getting ready to wrap this conversation this morning, Mr. Bhikarry, you know, are there any words that you want to leave with Tobago in regards to this situation?
I've been talking to Tobago for 30 years about building the adaptive capacity for things that could go wrong. Things have gone wrong. The climate has changed. People are rushing to drill oil, transport oil, to store oil. We have sanctions against countries who want to buy oil from other countries. And people are going to want to steal oil, and we're in the middle of all that here. What do I have to warn anybody about? We have national security who's warning that. There are budgets for that. No, that's outside my scope. But I do have concerns as a citizen.
And what are those concerns?
I don't think we're doing enough. We're talking enough, not doing enough, and that's sort of bigger picture.
All right, I want to thank you so much, Mr. Bhikarry, for being on with us and giving your perspective, especially from an environment side of things, of course. We are continuing to monitor the situation as the technocrats are all working, and we see them every day out there doing what they can to attempt to get the situation under control. So thank you again.